Okay, we are live. Welcome to it, everyone. Hope you had a decent weekend. Hope you're having an okay Monday. Please overlook my hair. The moisture and humidity has been having more of a damaging influence than per usual. But that is not why we are here today. We are here today because I want to talk a little bit about pagan books and how I think perhaps we could raise our standards. And by raising our standards, I'm not necessarily referring to the quality of the writing, more so about the quality of the focus of pagan publications in particular. And it's been a while since I reviewed a pagan book. It's not really something that I do very often. And one of the reasons for that is because I have a few ongoing and very consistent issues that really renders it impossible for me to freely recommend pagan books. But before I get into that, let me say hello chat, because as you can see, I don't have a presentation prepared. I didn't want to go through the formality of slides or anything like that. I just kind of want to share some of my thoughts. I do have some notes off to the side, so I don't get completely distracted. But I also want to hear some feedback from you guys. I want to hear about your own personal experiences because I want to find out, for one, if it's just me that has this issue, because if it's just me, we can write this off as, well, this is a Brigantia issue. It's special to her, and the rest of us can go on with our daily lives. But if this is something that is more widespread, I just think that we ought to talk about it, because if we talk about it, we can start looking for ways to make things better for ourselves. So the first issue that I generally have is when we have pagan authors that are way too revealing of their personal politics. And the bad thing with that, I mean, they're free to express their opinion. This isn't about outlawing people from saying what they think on the issues of the day. And no one, that their right to do so is not in doubt. What I'm saying is that, is it prudent to have that in more of our spiritual text? In my opinion, I don't think that it is. And the reason why I don't think it is because when the reader is first confronted with the author's essential political worldview, and they basically from that point forward know how they feel about pretty much every issue, and can predict reliably how they're going to vote on any particular issue, I think it's a distraction. And it means that everything that the author is writing, the reader has to keep the author's filter in mind. And also, I think it rather dates the material, because when people are looking and reading the author's views on current events, well, okay, but that means that we're not really framing the pagan material in the context of what's going to be a long term pattern of faith and practice. It's more so just in the here and now. And I think that is detrimental. I really do. Another problem that I frequently encounter in a lot of pagan books is when the author is too focused on entertaining the opinions and taking them seriously on non pagan faiths, and essentially putting non pagan faith center stage in what is supposed to be a pagan book. I think that's a problem in and of itself. And I think there's a difference to be made between, because sometimes we are looking at other faiths as a means to compare and contrast specific examples to say, okay, this is their mindset and this is what that mindset produces, versus this is our mindset and this is what our mindset produces. That's useful. That's not what I'm criticizing. What I have an issue with is when the reader is left with more information about the forms of spirituality that are outside of the pagan family tree than you have within it. And I don't really think when someone picks up a pagan book, their motivation is to hear about either the author's politics or about other religions. That's just, it's not why we're really there. At least I don't think that it is. Let me know your own motivations, because I definitely want to hear from you guys. So those are my usual issues, and unfortunately, I'm sorry to report that has been my exact experience with the most recent addition to my library, the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft by Judika Illes. It's a book I've had my eye on for a very long time. I did not pull the trigger on it because of the issues I just described. Um, but I also want to expand my collection of reference books. And so I eventually decided, well, okay, even if, worst fears are realized, there's bound to be some information in here that will be useful. And there is, but I was I was really struck by how much of the author's filter I had to peel away in order just to focus solely upon the actual point of the text. That was bothersome to me. After reading the first 14 pages of the book, I knew everything I think there is to know about the author's political worldview, how she's probably going to vote, what causes she promotes. If she's out protesting in the streets, I could, with some degree of accuracy, probably tell you exactly what she's protesting and why. And I do find that irritating because, again, that's not why I'm there. And I think that is kind of a selfish approach to take to a pagan textbook, especially something that's meant to be an encyclopedia of witchcraft. That's supposed to be witchcraft in general, not, this is the author's views on things. And it really is made worse by the way she approaches the topic in general. Because to begin with, she wanted to obviously define what witchcraft and what witches are, which, completely fair enough. And to say that she spent an exhaustive amount of time doing both and took absolutely every single opinion under the sun, mostly opinions taken from Abrahamic religions and their impressions and their fears, and to a certain extent from some Eastern religions, there wasn't as much mentioning about what pagan witches themselves say about pagan witches and pagan witchcraft. Um, and the upshot of it all is that, she didn't go through all of that and say, well, after everything is considered, this is what I think is a reasonable definition. You, the reader, you must make up your mind and act upon your own best judgment about what you think does constitute this and why you think it and all this and that. That's not the approach that she took, which, if it had been, I would have been much happier with it, because even though she included way more details than I personally will ever require, there would have been legitimacy. She would have been doing it in the spirit of building up a solid argument and doing it with as much information as possible, and that would have been fine. But she she essentially concluded that these words are almost beyond definition. I don't really think she declaratively made a statement on that topic. Just presented, oh, well, this is all very subjective. That really wasn't a winning start for me. And, just it left me with a bad taste in my mouth. And then another thing, and this is related to her politics, is that she focuses a great deal on grievances and frames a lot of material in terms of grievances, both her socio-political grievances and her spiritual grievances. And unfortunately, this gave me the impression that she's motivated by a sense of rebellion against Abrahamic religions, while not being able to divorce herself from their opinions regarding paganism, witchcraft. She almost treats them as if they're legitimate, which, that did not make a good impression on me, because, for one, you don't define yourself by what someone who's hostile towards you happens to think. That's not how you form your impression of your own character, much less your own religion. So that really bothered me. And also just the fact that she seems to be coming from this place of rebellion. I don't like that, and it's something I mentioned in my Wicca 101 series, is that if you're pursuing any kind of spirituality, it doesn't matter if it's the craft, paganism, Buddhism, Hinduism, whateverism. If you're doing it because you're rebelling against something else, then your motivations are, they're not pure, to say the least. But it's going to give you a distorted view of everything that you're doing, because you're not trying to find out if you're finding spiritual truth and a particular religion's worldview. You're not trying to find where you fit in with the spiritual fabric of things. It's just about be rebelling against something else. So you're not coming to it from a good place. So, in my opinion, that was a big problem. Let's see. Another issue is that she focused a great deal on issues dealing with power, both those who have it and those who don't. And that is a bit off-putting, because if you can practice the craft, you already have power because nature gave you power. It shouldn't be about trying to gain more, although as you grow in your abilities, you will certainly have greater capacity, much more control, and that's all fine and good. But it isn't about necessarily increasing your power. It isn't about it isn't about using the craft as a club, and there was a little bit of that that I found in her tone of writing, and I think it's compensation for either a real or perceived lack of power in her life, and also as a manifestation of her politics, because again, she's very grievance based. And another thing that was very consistent through what I read is that she was constantly harping upon dangers and how it can be dangerous to be known as a witch and this and that. And it almost reached the levels of a near irrational fear of those who are hostile towards paganism and witchcraft, saying there are parts of the world where it's still dangerous. Well, yes, it is. But you're writing in the Western world. And in the Western world, quite frankly, there are very few physical dangers that come to us because of our spiritual convictions as pagans or witches. And when it does come, we do have a lot of legal remedies that are at our disposal. So I found that less of offering a caution to new students and more almost of trying to transfer her fears that she clearly has not come to grips with into and to make them become the fears of the reader, which didn't like that, was not a fan. So once I realized that that was the tone she was sticking with, and I went through quite a bit of the book, and before I'm like, okay, this is where she's at. I just began flipping through it a little bit more randomly, and I found these same themes repeated over and over and over again. I could scarcely find a page where there was not uh, some bit of this attitude dripping onto it. Now, in fairness, interwoven with all of her filters, um, there are a lot of useful bits of lore, which is why I still consider it a good purchase for me because it has with any kind of a pagan reference book, there's going to be gaps in it because you can't cover everything. And so I did find that she was touching on some things that some of my other reference book did not go into as much detail about. So that is still good. The text is retaining some value. Um, and you just have to get past the author, which that's I don't think that's a really good way to go about things. And while I wouldn't suggest that any practitioner, particularly a practitioner of the craft, read any book regarding pagan spirituality and the craft uncritically, I don't think that's wise at all. However, I think there does reach a level when the author is adding so much of their own issues and layered layers of their filters. Uh, that the need to get past that and analyze it and try to take everything with a grain of salt, it's not really adding to the topic. It becomes a needless encumbrance to the reader, and unfortunately, in my opinion, that's what this author has done with this book. She has created an extra barrier for the reader because there's just too much of her personal opinions, and her style of writing is obscuring issues rather than clarifying. uh, I did find myself wondering about the author's natal chart, and I did do a quick Google search to see if I could find any information about her birthday. Um, I did not find any, but just from her style of writing, the way she was expressing herself, I think it's pretty probable that she has a lot of mutable signs in very prominent planets in her chart. I also think it's very fair to say that she has an extremely detail-oriented mind. If you have kind of the mindset where you need to know all the details in order to get the sense of something, this is going to be more so a style of writing that will appeal to you even once you get past her personal filters. For me, I'm more of a big picture kind of gal. Give me the main points, that way I see the structure of the thing, and then I will go into details as needed. But this is details first and structure later. So depending upon how your brain tends to work, you're going to have a different reaction just to the style of her writing. Um, and also, and this is another reason why I suspect there's a lot of mutable planets in her chart, she really has issues with anything that could be considered limiting. She goes well out of her way to avoid conclusions. It's almost as if and I've seen this with people who have a lot of mutable signs in their charts, most prominently in Sagittarians and Geminis. I see this a lot when they're expressing themselves, of trying to go out of their way to avoid conclusions because it seems like they have it in their head that if they express an opinion and they say, I feel pretty firm about this, that expression of an opinion is somehow in and of itself imposing that opinion and requiring others to share it when it really isn't. But there's a lot of fear with that. And I would be interested to see her chart. I think there's a lot of that energy going on there. So, the upshot is that for this particular book, I don't think it's very helpful to the reader. I think it's a stumbling block for new seekers who just want to discover what's what in the craft and to have something to decide about whether or not the path is really going to be for them. But I didn't want to do this live stream and talk to the community just to offer my opinions and offer a book review. That's what started this. But what I really want to put to everyone here is Does this style of pagan book represent what you personally signed up for when you began your spiritual journey? Particularly if you're one of my brothers and sisters in the craft, I would really love to know your opinion on this. Does this author represent your motivations, your philosophical or spiritual priorities? Do you think the author's approach would serve you long term? Definitely let me know in the chat, or if you're watching in the replay, in the comments, because I would really like to hear where everybody is at. Because, offering my opinion, that only takes us so far. I think it would be very helpful to just to get a broader spectrum of opinion. Now, I am streaming to both Rumble and YouTube at the moment. I'm not sure if the Rumble chats come through or not. The YouTube chats do, though. So if I'm not seeing your chat, that's because you're on Rumble. In fact, while I pause and take a breath before we get into the real meat and potatoes, let me pull up Rumble real quick and see just if anybody is there. Because if somebody is there, then I can definitely go back and forth. Okay. See, Rumble's doing the ads these days. Okay, skip that. Good Lord, you have to skip twice. I swear. All right, make sure. Okay, that's all done. See nobody. Okay, but now I've got everybody up, so we can have some proper back and forth now if you would care to. And I really hope you do care to, because I think it's important to talk about these things. So, while you guys are kind of gathering your thoughts, oh, and good day to you. Is it pronounced Oyen Badam or Owen Badam? Let me know phonetically. I'm terrible with pronunciation, so please bear with me. I do the best I can with the brain I've got to work with. But while everyone's kind of gathering their thoughts on this topic, I just want to share from my own experiences, because when I first got away from the Jehovah's Witness religion, and I was just looking into Christianity a little bit, and I thought, just no, no, for so many different reasons, no. I was really looking for a spiritual worldview that could explain an explanation of and contextualize my intuitive senses, that didn't involve, fears and notions of demonic influences or mental health issues, because I didn't think that was what was going on with me, and I didn't really appreciate things being framed that way. It didn't really seem to be matching up with reality. So I was looking for answers and explanations and a way to um, learn how to use this ability, because it wasn't going away. I had been suppressing it for 30 years at that point, and it wasn't working. So I needed something else. I needed a different direction. And I found that explanation and the context I needed in witchcraft. And as I explored the ideas associated with it and thought about it and put it to the test, the more it just all made sense to me. I could see the correlations between the natural world, human nature, and the spiritual principles I was learning, and there was and there is logical consistency. And that's why it's been, no matter, wherever else my explorations have taken me, the craft is always there, because it continues to make sense. I mean, this is my zone. This is where I'm supposed to be. So with that in mind, for me, if I pick up a pagan book or a witchcraft book, I'm not looking for the opinions of other religions. And I'm definitely not interested in an author nagging me to look into other religions on the grounds that I couldn't possibly understand the topic at hand unless I take the viewpoint of religions hostile to my own into account. I'm just not there. I'm also not looking for political opinions. I don't want to be able to tell what all the author's convictions on current events and issues are. That's not why I'm reading the book. And I think it's fair to bring this to the community and um, just ask that we entertain the question of, what are we looking for? In our books, what is necessary and what is beneficial and what will enable a book to have enduring and timeless value. Oh, and thank you for providing me with some pronunciation guidance. Oyen Badam, aka Annie, listening from North Carolina, USA. Welcome to the stream. Good morning to North Carolina. Very happy to have you here. Ah, great choice for this reading. Do the best I can with it. Um, and also, I want to make clear that just in case anyone is thinking I'm just picking on this one particular book or this one particular author, I'm really not. It's just an example of many. It's representative of a trend I've been noticing in pagan and witchcraft books for a number of years now, and it's on top of mind just because I got this book a few days ago, and uh, and I just want to make it clear that the authors who put too much of their own current event viewpoints into it, and when they're putting too much of other religions into these books, I really don't think that it's being done maliciously. That's not my argument. It's not what I believe. I think they're a product of their times, and I think they're a product of the shadow work that they have not been doing, which I would really encourage them to do because all this stuff, these distractions, it's getting in the way. And I think the approach, it's doing a disservice to pagans and witches, and it's possible to do a disservice to people without having any malevolence in your heart, just because of not realizing the implications of what one is doing, or just not not having information that clarifies the issue in our minds. And this can happen to us in so many aspects of life, and it's happening in our books right now. And I just think we can do better, and we begin the process of doing better for ourselves and for the next generation of pagans and witches by these conversations right here. I think we do have an obligation to set up the future generations up for success as much as possible. And just selfishly, I imagine most of us would prefer for our next incarnation into mortal life not to have the exact same struggles and issues that we are dealing with today. That's just me. But I really want to focus on potential remedies. I want to toss out a few things for just everyone's general consideration to get feedback, alterations, other people's ideas, et cetera, and so on. Because I know we have talent in this community, and I know most of us know other creatives within the pagan and witchcraft worlds, and there's just bound to be someone who's connected to the web we've been building here, who has both the ability and the desire to produce books that are actually going to be worth the money and have an enduring shelf life of relevance for us. So that's where I'm going to be starting off on. See, and Annie says, "Cheers, been listening to you for a few months, no questions." Oh, thank you for listening to me for months on end. It always surprises me when people stick around because there's a lot of options for sure, and I don't know. I annoy myself, so I'm always surprised when people get past my faults and stick with me. So thank you very much. 100% on point this morning. Thank you again for that. That is huge. That lets me know that other people are kind of in a same zone with this. We're wanting to raise the standards on our material a little bit, just because it's needed. But the fact that I'm not the only one seeing that it's needed is extremely helpful. It'll help me ramble on a little bit. Okay, so ideas, remedies, and of course, anyone watching, toss in your own. Let me know what you think about these, just because and it's like I say when I do the live streams on American paganism and witchcraft, this is not the product of one person. This is not something to be dictated by one person. This is, community discussion, and it's for community evolution. So that spirit in mind, here's my first idea. I think first and foremost, we've got to promote a general separation between politics and religion. You hear this in a controversy coming up in, discussions on present day, and like, well, that's not mentioned in the Constitution. Well, no, it isn't. But the reason why it's become culturally normal and why it's culturally desirable is because you don't want these realms infringing upon each other. Mixing the two, and unfortunately the insistence of some that there's only one brand of politics that's acceptable in paganism. I mean, this has just been an absolute cancer for our community. It has poisoned our relationships. It's actually preventing us from forming a stronger community that's not setting up for us up for success in the future. I mean, it hasn't been good for us. And let's be real. Does any one of us really want to be confronted with politics when we are looking for spirituality? Do we want to be subjected to ideological purity tests if we happen to attend a pagan festival or go to a public ritual, or if we're just wanting to hang out, have a damn cup of coffee with other people in our spiritual community? I'm guessing no. I'm guessing most of us don't actually want that and are pretty sick of how politics and current events have saturated everything else. We need some sacred spaces that are about the enduring, and not about just the issues of the day. Which, I mean, can you imagine if the information we inherited was just representative of the time in which it was written down? When the issues of the day, the controversies, the struggles that people were having were entirely different. I mean, can you imagine how useless that information would be to us now if that's what it was? And that's another reason why I'm just kind of wanting to encourage, let's get a separation. Let's start thinking long term. So I think just confronting that, because it became normal in a lot of pagan circles, and I think we need to denormalize it. I think we can encourage healthy change. I think that's one thing that can be done, and that doesn't require anyone who wasn't inclined to write books or create video content is capable of doing. You're not having to, uh, you know, have my focus in life was this, but because of my community I'm going to write a book instead. I'm not I'm definitely not trying to push that off on anybody. But I think we can encourage just saying, can we keep these things separate? Because I think it'd be good for us. See, and Annie says, plain speaking. Yeah, that's what I do here. Tact is tact is not what I do. Oh, the other day, I think it was yesterday, we had the Queen of Swords come up in the tarot, and I was thinking, especially when I first started studying, anytime I was doing self readings, the Queen of Swords was always coming up because of my sharp tongue and because kind of a no nonsense, not interested in your excuses kind of attitude. So I almost did this live stream yesterday, but I got to thinking about that card. I'm like, no, no, let's not give that aspect of my character undue fuel. We can talk about it on Monday. But yeah, so let me know what you think about that. Just we need to just kind of, as a community, say we're just going to separate politics and religion. We're going to separate that in our conversations, separate that in our interactions, and ultimately separate that from video content and our books. So that's idea number one. My second idea is that to encourage those who are speaking publicly about paganism and witchcraft to stay focused on the spiritual topic at hand, to not be, not reward them for getting when they get carried away venting about issues that maybe we have with other religions, or when they're suggesting that we should cower in fear because of another religion's disagreement or disapproval. Cowardice has never been a pagan virtue, so I don't think that's something we should be doing now. And I think whether it's a book, a blog, video content, people just remembering them and reminding the creators out there that we're coming here for spirituality. We're not coming here for grievances. We're not coming here for the controversies of the day or controversies with other faiths. What's actually mattering to us is the viewpoints in the pagan world, how pagans practice, how pagans feel about certain things, what pagans believe, what pagan virtues build us up. And I think this needs to be really emphasized. Because some people think that if you're not including absolutely everything, that you've committed this terrible, unforgivable sin. And I just want to state, it is okay and it is a desirable state of affairs for us to have spaces that are just for us, sacred unto ourselves. And to remember and to remind ourselves also that other religions are responsible for the creation and maintenance of their spaces that are for them and sacred to them. They don't need to live rent free in our heads. We don't need to take care of them for us. They need to look after their own, and we should look after ours. That's my second. See, Matthew Carter has something to say. He says, more specifically, authors should stop imposing their political beliefs onto the religion. Too many books on Wicca and witchcraft are ruined by political or ideological nonsense. Oh, my brother. Exactly. My feelings exactly. What I've been saying this whole thing. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't improve understanding. If anything, it obscures it. And I mean, think about, some of the attitude I get because I have a confession to make. I ended up going back to Twitter, X, Twix, whatever we're calling it these days. I went back there just because I wanted to get my finger back on the pulse about what people were saying, and kind of in the public sphere. And whenever I get the nastiest reactions, because on there I'm going by American paganism and witchcraft, so it's out there in the open who I am and what my purpose for being there is. And some of the nastiest things that I have had said to me to date, it was coming from people who assumed that I had particular beliefs or that I had particular ideologies. They weren't. And when I would try to explain, no, this is what I actually think, their minds were completely closed. And it was because of just this cancer that has been on the pagan community, where people say, no, it's this politics, it's this ideology, and everything else of that is just horrible. No, no, it isn't. That's a corruption, and it's maddening. And I can't solve it single-handedly, King. So I'm glad to see that more of you are on that same wavelength, because this is definitely going to require a lot of pressure from us onto our brothers and sisters, saying we need to leave this behind. We need to, outside of our spheres, where we vote and we believe what we believe, but when we are inside our spiritual circles, that we need to be sticking to actual pagan beliefs. We need to be sticking to what's genuine within the craft. That's where we're needing. Now this brings me to idea 3. We need writers. We need a lot of writers. And we need writers whether they're inclined towards smaller projects or larger projects, but we need writers to tell our story from our mindset, from our worldview, share the building blocks of pagan faith and the foundation of witchcraft and magic without excuse or apology, and without referencing others. Now, I'll get into an associated issue with that with just a minute, but we really need to have the people who are out there presenting an affirmative vision. And also, uh, you know as I have on all of the introductions of my videos, about taking a more practical approach. And this is something that also reminds me of a conversation that I recently saw on X. There was a lady, one of us, who was saying that you know paganism was not this academic thing. It has become academic in modern times out of necessity, and that has its place. But when it comes to the ebb and flow of daily pagan life, we're not it's not about what Professor so and so says. It isn't about experts. It's about relationships, our spiritual relationships, our connections to the gods, to our ancestors, to the land, to one another. That is really where the center of pagan spirituality is, and a lot of it is experiential, and a lot of it is a bit more personal. But there's broad strokes that a lot of us align on, but there's a lot of it that is personal. Lessons that were just for us that day because our minds were open and we were listening, and some dots connected in our brains because of something we observed or something we experienced. A lot of it is that. And there's also been increased talk, I've noticed, about the reliance and trust on intuition. And just the other day, we were talking about how sometimes our intuition is linked with ancestral memory, and that we are essentially being spoken to through our own personal lineage. Um, and it's something that's intensely personal, and I'm noticing there is a lot of personal. It's not denying the common strokes. It's not denying a lot of the ideas that have become um, foundational beliefs. It's not about denying any of that, but it is about getting a lot more personal, a lot more practical, and being real about it in every context. See, and Andy says, conjure and root work, any thoughts? It resonates for me. I have no objection to any particular methodology. One of the things about my own approach and philosophy to witchcraft is that the differences in paths. A lot of them are just teeny tiny little tweaks of philosophy, and sometimes some paths promote certain methodologies over others. But the only litmus test for me is, did it work? Because if a method worked, it's legitimate, and that's fine. And I'm not really concerned about, I only do this one kind of method. No, 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 no. We have all kinds of toys. We have so much a wealth of experience of practitioners who are able to accomplish different intentions through different methods. So I'm not. I don't have any particular prejudices on that at all, just because, again, it's what works. And also, sometimes methods, it has a lot to do with where we are environmentally and the local culture there. I mean, if root work is big in a particular place, then you're going to find more practitioners who not only resonate with it, but that becomes a large part of their practice because it's the custom, because there's something about the environment that makes it particularly effective. And in other areas, it might be something entirely different. It might be areas more inclined towards candle work or towards cleansing spells. I mean, we also, I mean, for me, it's what's environmental. What are you able to get to work? What gives you consistent results? Everything is just method. The differences in ideology are very, very slight. Once you remove the political filters, um, how it's done, it's very, we have nothing but options. So I'm not, it's never been my concern about what methods people were using. I'm more concerned with, are they remembering to operate within no natural law so that they can actually set themselves up for success? Because if you're trying to do something that nature's not going to let you do, well, you can guess the success rate on that. So there's that. There's that. But going back to the previous topic about presenting an affirmative view of who and what we are, without making reference to others. I think that's very helpful. And honestly, when we have new seekers, I think that's something that they're looking for. They're not necessarily needing a comparing and contrasting of various theological issues. What they're needing is just, what does this consist of? What is the source material? Who is useful to go to for guidance? How can I put this into practice and determine if it's for me? They just want to know what it is. They're not looking for this big academic um, argument. And that brings me to idea four, that I think it would be very helpful for our community to make a distinction between when we are writing books that are geared to be an explanation of pagan history, which would include our history with other religions, past and present, and other books that are specifically intended to explain pagan theology and practice. Um, I think we need to have a separation of the two because, it's in my experience, the books that I've tried to do both, one tends to overshadow. And if someone's really concerned with the history, they tend to kind of overemphasize conflicts that we have had with other religions. And I don't think that's very helpful. so, um, that's why I think we do need to have more of a distinction and encourage this. Now, people who write, they're going to write what they want to write, but I'm just saying, I think as a community, we can give our writers feedback saying it's really helpful if we separate these issues. That way, if I wanted to look at the history and the whys and wherefores of how we got here and what that all means, I can specifically look for that. And in another book, if I'm wanting to ideas about how to live a more pagan life, or if I'm a new student and I want to know what pagan beliefs are, how is pagan ritual conducted, I can look for books that are specifically on that topic, and I can stay focused. Because that's another thing. There's so much a sense of people being overwhelmed when they enter our world. And so many people, I think that's why they keep themselves at more of a surface level, because the idea of sticking a toe into deeper waters is just, they're drowning. They have been taken by the tidal wave. They don't know if they're ever going to be able to get themselves back up to the surface. Because they are overwhelmed and because they've been said, you need to learn these 12 interwoven things all at once. Well, that doesn't necessarily go very well, and not everyone's brain works that way. Let's just be honest. We don't all think alike. We don't all learn alike, and we don't absorb and digest information alike. So, allowing for people to have a little bit more focus to take things in digestible chunks, I think that's helpful. And honestly, I mean, that's why I do the daily forecast the way that I do. you know Here's today's energy astrologically. Here's a confirmation or another energy to take into account with the tarot card. Here's a bit of pagan wisdom from a quotation. Here are some magical correspondences for you to bear in mind. Here's our next holiday that we're getting prepared for. Here's a journal prompt. It's small, digestible chunks. People take what they need or what they want, and they can leave the rest behind, as circumstances make necessary. And I think on the larger scale with pagan books, I think it would be helpful to replicate that a little bit. And that brings me to idea five. I think we need to focus a lot more on our own spiritual heritage and its stories. There's a great power and a sense of connection to be found in our stories and mythology. It's the heart of soul of who we are as a people, and these are our shared stories. The stories of other religions, they're really for people belonging to these religions. And one example I'd like to bring to your attention, it's a series that's being shown on Amazon. It's called House of David, and it takes the biblical account of King David, and they just worked their way up to the point where he slayed Goliath, with his rock. Um, and, the way and my husband and I were kinda on the fence about whether or not we wanted to watch it because the story in and of itself has huge dramatic potential. So we thought, let's see if they did it well or if it got too preachy. It's beautifully shot. You see just the proper landscape around it. The people, they look ethnically the way that they should. Uh, and it's telling the story from very much the point of view from those ancient Israelites and their essentially their formative years as a nation and the controversies that they had and why it was going on and all this and that. From time to time, it's a bit much, I admit, but overall, it's told by people who simply wanted to tell a good story. And I'm anytime I watch an episode, I'm just struck. I'm like, I thought people of the Jewish faith, they must look at this and just feel something overwhelmingly awesome, because essentially they are looking at their own ancestors. These are their stories of their people, of the source of their religion, and everything else. I mean, and that's just got to really resonate them in a way that it does not resonate with anyone else, not even Christians. Although I imagine a lot of Christians who, at least the ones who don't discount the Old Testament, are also pretty excited about it. But primarily, it really that is something that I think is really deeply meaningful for Jewish people, and I'm sure that um, any of them who watch it, that they just feel something a little bit more. And it just got to and it struck the contrast in my mind is that despite having been raised in a Christian faith, despite the Jehovah's Witness emphasis on using both the Old and the New Testaments, despite being steeped in that for the first 30 years of my life, I felt such a sense of disconnection. For me, I was just watching an interesting story with decent acting, interesting landscape, and lots of drama. That's what I was watching. The connection did not go any deeper. However, it's a completely different experience for me if I am reading the mythology of the Norse, the Celts, Germanics, even the Greeks and the Romans, to a certain extent, the Egyptians. Whether it is the ancient mythologies or if people are retelling it, it's a very different experience. That is when I'm getting that sense of this is whence when I came, genetically, and certainly as a part of the American system. Essentially, we are the inheritors of the entire Western tradition of political thought. And not just political thought, but cultural thought. The myths and legends and everything else. All of it is crammed in here in the very formation of the United States and the premise upon which it's actually based. And, I feel so much more than that. I feel something for that I don't feel when it comes to any other story from any other religion. And I think that it's okay to reckon with that. I think it's okay to acknowledge that. And I think it's also okay to say that, I'm not really wanting to seek spiritual inspiration from other faiths. I want to stick closer to home. I want to stick to something that has inherent built-in meaning and relevance to me. And and in addition to our established mythology, I think we'd have a huge benefit if there were more works of fiction that kind of showcased a pagan mindset and pagan heroic journey and our connection with the land, each other, and the gods, our ancestors. Especially if we got some authors also wrestling with that in an American cultural context, whether it's alternate history or things set in the present day, in the future, wherever the creative mind takes them. And the reason why I think it would be good to do this is because while not all of these stories would be inspired of the gods or would be guided by the words of the muses, not necessarily, but it would certainly open the door of opportunity for such to speak place. The gods have always spoken through storytelling. Every so often, even with secular writers, we get little glimmers of just, huh, that line that was just said, or the way the story was just told, that felt like it was a little bit more than just general writing. And when I get those little nudges, I pay attention to them because I figure that there's always a possibility that the gods use that voice to speak to us. And so I think if there was more fictional writing on this account, I think we could also open up that opportunity. And again, this isn't about being preachy or overbearing or anything else. It's just about operating from our own mindset and from within our own culture, and just from a frame of reference that is us, our spirituality, our gods. I think that would be extremely helpful. So those are just kind of my 5 ideas that I just came up with real quick this morning. Again, if you guys have thoughts, type away. I can keep rambling on for a little bit so you can get a word in edgewise. But bottom line, at least for me, I think we have enough to digest and analyze and enact just by focusing on pagan traditions, theology, and practice without dragging in other religions, without tainting it with political and social issues of the day. I think we are really capable of doing better than this. I really believe that we are. And I believe that we will be better off if we do keep our own focus closer to home. But like I said, I'm going to give you all a chance to chat. Also, coincidentally, the same day that I got that book, I got a new rune set. My old runes, they were appropriated by cats, and they have been hidden away. So I figured that was my sign to go ahead and get a new set of runes. And I've been a bit rusty with runes, so I've needed to I have needed to get back and practice. So I thought it might be a little bit fun to do the first rune casting together. Oh, also point of interest, these runes are made out of buffalo bone. And I thought that's pretty appropriate for an American witch, because buffalo are, they're just so iconic of the Old West and the struggles involved with that. And there's a lot of efforts nowadays to start trying to build up the population again. So I don't know, it feels like a very important animal, and I kind of like having a little bit of them in my runes. So what I'm going to do is draw 5 runes. This is a suggested runes layout. I mean, a lot of runes, you just kind of scatter them and you do it a bit more intuitively. But since I'm out of practice, I thought I would try out one of the spreads. It's going to be just 5 runes, and it's in the shape of a compass. The first rune represents the west. It's about identifying the problem. The second rune is the north. That shows baneful influences and actions and things to be careful about. The third is the east, indicating the positive forces that we can lean on to support any decisions we make. The fourth represents the south, which is the immediate future of the question. And the fifth is the way the question, the center is the way the question will develop over time in the final outcome. So, question I ask is just, where do we go from here? Just looking for a little bit of extra guidance. So, first card representing the West, and we pulled Isa. It represents inactivity, stagnation, reflection, withdrawal. Not exactly the state of affairs a pagan ever wants to be in. And I think it's very appropriate this is coming up in the context of everything we just discussed, because there has been stagnation. We have been actively hampered by too much politics, too much current events, too much referencing of religions outside of our own. It has actively gotten in the way of pagan development. So there's our stagnation. Our second one in the north, baneful influences. For that, we got, there we go. We got radio. It's about travel, change, destiny, relocation, and journey. So we have been jostled about quite a bit, haven't we? That's the difficulty. And what's even more frightening is that in order to fix the problem, we will essentially be going into the unknown, or at least the unknown for us. There are certain norms that got established when the pagan movement really started to take off during the 1950s. It started becoming a bit more public and a bit more well known. And there's been a lot. And we're going to have to probably reassess some of our own ideas. And I explore that a little bit in the American Paganism and Witchcraft series that I'm doing, just because I think we have been so over academicized that we have forgotten how to listen to the land where we're actually at. We have forgotten about the relationship aspect of it. So, our third in the East, the helpful forces we can lean on to support us during this process. And for this, we pulled, let's see, where are we at? Where are we at? Oh, I swear. There we are. For this, we pulled Yura. Harvest, sequence, cycle, end, and outcome. So this does indicate what's we're going to have to carry on with the work of sorting ourselves out and getting things on a better footing through a process. The fact that it's talking about an entire cycle. This could mean the cycling of generations, possibly. Could also mean making a concerted effort over the next few growing seasons. So both, especially in the spiritual context of actively working on this every single day and trying to get things on a better footing. Then our fourth is the South, the immediate future of our prospects. For this, we have Laguz. Ah, let's see, and its words are renewal, dreams, flow of emotions, and unconscious mind. So the fact that this has to do with our immediate future in regards to what we've been discussing, that is telling me we are going to absolutely have to go the much more intuitive ride. Probably this would be an excellent time to engage in a lot of dream works, asking directly for divine involvement and just little nudges, kind of push us in the right direction so that we can stay on track. But this is going to involve a lot of going within. So big stuff there. And then finally, at the very center, the way this is going to develop over time. For this, we pulled algaes. Success, support, shield, and shelter. This is telling me that our prospects for success of, sorting out our video content, sorting out our books, sorting out pagan culture in general to where we're actually focused on paganism and not all these other extraneous things. Our prospects are good. We can build a shelter for ourselves. We can shield ourselves and each other from, unfriendly energies for sure, and possibly unfriendly people if it came to that. But also that we have success on the horizon. We just need to keep working at it. We just need to divorce ourselves from some old patterns that very clearly are not only serving us who are, here, but they're not serving anyone in the community. So I think we have a lot going for us. I think this is a um, pretty good prospect to reflect upon. I mean, yes, we have quite a challenge and a hurdle to overcome, and yes, that not everything's going to go our way, and yes, it is going to require a lot of work. But think of the outcome. Think of the benefits long term, and again, not just us, and not just the future generation of pagans. I mean, if nothing else, have a little selfishness and think about your future incarnations. Set yourself up for success really long term and think about just what is it that we are trying to build, getting past pointless controversies, focusing more so on what matters, building relationships, and honestly of starting to just not treat the people who are pointing out all of the difficulties and being the naysayers, just not necessarily giving them the time of day, because people of that mindset, they're not exactly there to help. They're there to spew their emotions, and they're spewing a lot of energy that is not exactly constructive. And I think it's time to start starving them, not giving them an audience, not giving them any quarter, and not listening to their excuses or treating them as if we're all doomed to somehow a legitimate position to hold. There's always something we can do to make improvements, and there's always something we can do that is at least moving things forward for us. So that's what I got, and I've been rambling on for just about an hour. I want to thank everyone who popped in to listen. I want to thank everyone who was kind enough to be part of the conversation and chat with me a little bit. I very much appreciate that, and I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you'll decide to join me in doing your own part of working on this problem that we have. So I'm going to let you guys go now. I know it's Monday. I'm sure you all got work to do, so won't be too much of a distraction. Go do the stuffs, and I will catch you guys at a later time, but have a great one.